Hello and welcome to Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 255 for Friday, August 7, 2026. It is an Open Lines Friday. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant an App, and this is an event that we do most Fridays, 10 a.m. Central Time, where we get together and talk about all things Plant an App. Everyone's welcome, so if you're watching in replay, please join us sometime. We record all of these and put them on YouTube so you can watch them in replay. They're available at youtube.com/plantanap. We'll run this agenda. It's our common agenda where we stop and say hello because we're a friendly group, and then we'll always start with first call, anything you've submitted in advance, and we'll touch on some of these other areas. And then after a while, we'll go into afterglow, and I'll mention that due to a scheduling conflict, we may not have time for afterglow. We may actually cut this one a little bit short today, but um, we'll play that by ear as we get into the second half. We do encourage you to jump in, show and tell. Lots of people use the raise your hand button, so that's a fun thing. Anyway, do engage with us. You can submit questions and topics in advance using support@plantanap.com. I'll take a look, maybe do a little bit of research, but put it on the agenda for discussion. Hello, one and all.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Did anyone come with something they wanted to talk about? This is the spot where you don't be shy. Otherwise, I'll just dive into something. Welcome, Mark. All right. Well, let's see what I have. I don't have a lot, but last week we talked about the multi-step form in Forms 2.0, and I could talk a little bit about our plans for the save as draft story. Um, but I'm looking for a little direction from you. Is that something you want to hear, or do you want to talk about anything else?
Those are good things.
All right. Thank you for the reassurance. All right, here we go. So I'm going to just talk generally about where we're going with that, and then where we think we're going, and maybe one of the areas that we got into a little bit of I won't say confusion, but we're still trying to brainstorm. So maybe you'll have an answer to the area where we're struggling a little bit. The The idea of save as draft or autosave drafts is the way that we're approaching it at the moment is that we want to do something where you as a form designer in Forms 2.0 can have a switch on the form that says it would default to a normal form, does without any saving as draft, but at a high level that you have the power to turn that on, and then just kind of automatically the progress that a user is making will be saved as draft. And if they go away from the form, either because maybe they navigate to a different page on your site and come back to it, they navigate away and come back at some later time. Um, you know, a browser gets closed accidentally, whatever the case is, when they come back to that same form on that same page, if draft mode is enabled, then they're going to pick up as close as we can put them to where they left off. So first of all, and now I'm just trying to engage you so that this is not me talking for the next 45 minutes. So any reaction to whether that is capability that you would use? Um, and Jim raises his hands right away. Thank you, Jim. What do you got?
So, one, is my mic working?
You're with us. I got you.
Okay. And I like that idea. I think the save as draft would be on as the default, um, because even I've had that experience where I just accidentally closed the wrong browser window. Um, but I think it should be an on um, and go that way. But I like the idea of save as draft.
I'm sorry, you feel like it should be on by default?
On by default, yes.
Okay. And Ben, you're playing along too. Thank you.
Um, so sorry, hate to be the dissenter. I mean, I like the idea. I don't know if I would want it on as default, because I would expect that number one, it's going to take more processing power. Depending on where it's stored, it's going to take storage space, so forth, so on. So I don't know about that. But as much as I like the idea, I will just say one thing that compared to other things, this particular option, while very nice, me personally, I would say it's a lower priority.
So this is a nice to have as compared to, and bear in mind, we're talking about forms two, not action
Hmm.
form. But is there something specific you have in mind that it goes ahead of in forms two?
Well, I just mean with regards to all of the functionality to get forms to at the level of minimum action forms type of
Hmm.
thing. So once we have a working forms 2.0 that can do everything action forms can do, adding this to it, great. I just don't want to hold up forms 2.0 to add a feature like this into it. Like,
So that actually brings up a really, I mean, a foundational point. The reason why we got here, as we were doing Forms 2.0, we looked around and thought about, are there things or there are things that um, will be difficult to engineer in later. So what are the big rocks that we wanted to get accomplished and make sure that it's not a case of you develop something and then you're trying to shoehorn in something else that you didn't plan for. So I think this falls into that category. There's some other things, for example, localization that needed to be addressed before in this as a core feature. So I think this is the reason why we're getting into it. I understand your argument though. Okay. So kind of taking this, peeling the layers of the onion back, we originally thought about this as perhaps something that would be um, uh, there's a lot of different ways that this could be implemented. Is it implemented on the browser level, implemented on the server level, both? Can you transfer a draft from one device to another? Uh, just do you have multiple copies of a draft? And we are the current thought is that we're going to focus in on one um, on browser based and one copy of the draft and trying to keep it very automatic. The capabilities of forms, if you want to do some of those other things, as a low code engineer, the tools are there for you to be able to design your own. Meaning, you have a save it as draft button, you put the data someplace, they go to another device, you've handed them some kind of key that they can use to go bring that up, and so the tools are there. So um, we thought we could make the most impact um, in trying to keep it as automatic as possible. You turn it on, and we solve the scenario where a window got closed, or you got partway through and then distracted, left it for 10 hours, and you're logged out, and now you're going to come back and you want to continue. So that's kind of where we got to. Um, So,
So, Dave,
oh,
I'll weigh in
yes,
there. Yeah.
please, Mark, now your turn.
Um, I'm currently running a photo contest using Mathanapp, and there were 30 people who started to fill out my form and then didn't finish. The finish part is the payment part, so I suspected I knew why they didn't finish. But I sent them links, each one of them, that if they clicked it, it would reload their form with all their data already in it. And a fair percentage of them used it and finished the transaction. All that to say, I think people get distracted from their forms for a myriad of reasons, and the programmer having the ability to refill the form makes the difference sometimes between them filling it out and completing it or just walking away. So I really like the ability to save as draft. From the user's perspective, I think it'll be more completed forms that way. If I may add a feature or two, I would add, as the programmer, I would like to see the data that they filled in so far. I'd like to have access to that. And secondly, a thought that I had is for the person who starts filling in a form and then needs to change their mind or they don't like what they had so far, a button to clear it and start over would be appropriate. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Thanks for that. Since you threw out specific points, I'll tell you where we are on those. On the, we're split down the middle, right? Because if we continue on our current path and we're addressing this at the browser level, you as the form designer wouldn't have access to their autosave unless you implemented it. So you'd have to do something. Just turning on the feature doesn't give you access to the data. On the other hand, the clear form and start over button is explicitly in the plan.
Okay.
Um, and okay, I think Ben, is your hand up again?
Yes, it is.
Please come.
So two things. Something that you said triggered something in my head. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the name save as draft is probably just a placeholder, but for something like what you're describing, autosave to me is a much better term than save as draft. Save as draft implies to me click a button to save it, whereas autosave implies you don't do anything, it's automatically going to do the work for you, X number of seconds or whatever. Um, the other thing is, um, like I said, while I love this idea, I don't want to hold things up for it. But one thing that I guess it's on par with this idea, to a certain degree, that I have been wanting to see for a very long time is an on dirty value for every single field on a form. It would be great if that on dirty value could be accessible at the browser level. So if someone wants to write Java code that has a timer on it that checks every single, particular form field for an on dirty value of true, or at the time of submission, so that we at the server side can decide, well, which pieces of data are we going to be actually pushing as an update based off of the on dirty value. There's been a lot of times where I wish I had that ability because I want to be able to see up front which values were changed, which stayed the same, without having to do a
Manual.
round trip to the server to compare the two pieces of data to figure that out.
Okay. So yeah, thanks for that feedback, and I think that that's something that I'll definitely bring back to our product team to think about. In the context, so first of all, starting with autosave drafts to local browser storage, that's the current name of the story that we're. So save as draft was probably was an early placeholder. This is the current thing, current name. In the midst of this, in the story, it does specify some on-dirty classes that would be added to fields and the form and to fields. So potentially, I mean, I want to make sure that we potentially the need that you mentioned on the JavaScript side could be filled by that, but I want to think about it and talk about it with the team a little bit because I think the concept of is dirty on our side was originally whether or not it has been auto saved into the draft. And so we haven't yet defined when autosave would take place. Is it as they blur out of a field? Is it as they with a timed delay as they leave the form, but as they leave close the browser, leave the tab, that kind of thing. And so if that got reset on autosave, then it's really doesn't solve the purpose that you described. But it might be the perfect time to introduce whether the field is dirty in this perspective that you mentioned. So the answer is that I'll talk about it with the team, and we'll probably if we do that I think we'll have to differentiate what that means. Basically, I mean, we'll probably have to find it's really is dirty from the developer's perspective versus draft perspective. Might find different terminology to reflect that. So maybe it's is dirty and is saved. Is auto saved. Cool. Jim, you're waiting patiently for me to finish my thoughts in my head.
So I was just going to make a clarification on my prior comment, which was I was thinking autosave should be on by default, but I was thinking of the design during the design phase of building forms, not so much in the users completing a form. So.
Meaning you place the new form on the page and it comes in with autosave.
As I'm building a form, I'd like it to be saved in as I'm working on the page.
Your autosave of design.
Going as design.
Interesting.
The other one, I still like the feature of being able to save it. I think it should go to the browser storage, and yeah, being there to do that, but being able to turn that on or off based on a form, I could see that being a default as off until you enable it.
So that's a different topic, autosave of the design, but since you raised it, let's go there for a minute. How would you reconcile that against wanting to throw away your changes? Right. I open an action form and I'm hitting the save button pretty frequently because I don't want to lose my work, but sometimes I work and then I decide, nope, I don't like this, and I'm going to F5 refresh and start on the clean form.
Well, usually I end up deleting the form and starting over again if I've made too many changes. I mean, it'd be nice if there was some sort of rollback function, but not a earth-shattering feature to have.
Yep. which is not a uh, I mean, one could imagine saving X number of versions. Uh, so, thinking about, for example, if you're looking at a browser and you've got the back button and you can go back 1 page or 2 page or 5 pages, and there's a list. But, um, so has just kind of thinking that through, has it been what kind of problem has it been for you to not have autosave of the design?
The, I mean, one that you only make a few times, and then you learn from your mistakes. Save more often. Um, but it's usually on an accidental window close, or going to
Mm-hmm.
look something up, and it's not a huge problem, but it not one I'm with Ben. I'd rather have more feature in the product sooner than trying to get that one to work.
Okay. So we have this in our design system, we have a front door, and I'll capture that as an idea on the front door to address at some future time. We'll figure out what to do with that at the right time, but I'll put that in there. Okay, so back to
Can
the
I jump in on
these.
that? Um, with the because you had asked how would an autosave on design kind of play out interface wise, and I was thinking, how we have the save button. If there was a autosave on the design side, to have maybe a button next to save that would say like save draft, where the autosave is constantly saving on the browser or wherever it's saving, and then it doesn't actually commit those changes to the live save. So once we click on the save draft button, that takes that draft part and then fully commits it over. So that way, like you said, if you're making changes and it's saving what you're doing, so if you accidentally close the browser and come back, it's going to bring up all the changes that you did, but it's still a draft change. It's not something running live. And if you decide, you know what, I don't want this anymore, then have a button maybe like clear draft or toss
Mm-hmm.
draft, whatever. And then we don't have to move forward with it. But if you do make all the changes, you're playing with it, you're testing it, and everything is great, then you say, you know what, now I want to make it live. Then we click on save the draft copy.
Okay. I'll put those ideas into the hopper. Jim, did your hand raise again?
It did, along, because the other thing I thought of when Ben was speaking was the ability, when you have those saved drafts, to keep the old version published and working. So you have a working form, you want to make some modifications,
Yep.
and go publish a new draft or save a new draft of it so you can work on it without it going live.
Yep. That I will make sure that that gets it into the into that story. I think it's an interesting idea. Um, I could see, for example, that yeah, I could see the usefulness of it, and so, but so let's put a pin in it there. Um, so back to what we were thinking, and I'm trying to get to the area of where I need some help in thinking it through. So we have this. We're talking about on the user side that it's auto saving the draft and it's storing in their local storage. So it's turned on with one setting, and our hope is, for the most part, you won't have to do anything special if you don't want to. Meaning you as the developer can put fields on the form and have your save button and don't have to make any special considerations for saving the draft or getting it to restore. Um, that's the hope. So things are going to be automatically saved, that um, they'll automatically be restored. Um, if you want, you could add a button that would have a type of cancel, a button type of cancel, so that you click that and the form initializes without a draft. So the effective that's Mark's point, clear the form, start over. We were thinking in terms of providing some user feedback. So automatically, by turning that on, you're going to see some kind of a saving indicator or a saving slash saved, and maybe having that be at the top right of the form. That would have some CSS associated with it. So if you wanted to hide it, you could. But again, just by turning it on, you're starting to let people know that the draft is auto-saved. There was some limitations that we were concerned with, uh, specifically file upload controls. And I know, Mark, this is going to be an area you were talking about doing a photo contest and having a half filled in form that might include an image. This is a problem for us because um, uh, if you select a file in a single file upload or a multi-file upload control, um, it's there, and you can, if you hit submit, we can upload the file to the server. But if we're sticking with this concept of it being in local storage, it's hard for us to, not impossible, but introduces a lot of complexity to try to store that file someplace in local storage and get it to reflect properly when they restore, but just because of browser limitations and security limitations. So our initial product would explicitly, um, excuse me, our initial delivery of this would explicitly not handle the file upload controls, but to our knowledge, everything else would be supported.
Dale, on that front, I learned that I need to upload those files immediately. So when the user chooses a file to upload, I've got it set to upload immediately. Um, if you were to do that, you might even put those into a temporary location with a timer where it times out or something like that, or it gets stored in the right place when they submit or something like that. So I'm just suggesting an option might be to go ahead and upload them immediately instead of waiting for the form submit.
And those were the kinds of things that were kicked around, and it's just um, that it added sufficient complexity that we're not giving up on that, but just deferring it so that we can reasonably deliver this feature um, that would be, 95% complete. But I think that's the direction that we would go. Upload the file, put it in a secure location. There'd have to be rules around that. And then it would be, but you'd have to manage the user still having the ability to remove it before they do the final submission, and how long does it hang around, and it, there was a level of difficulty that
Yeah, it sounds a little messy.
it was. And there's also the possibility of storing it in local storage, and and you could submit it when the submit button happened, but as far as the on-screen display I mean, those file controls don't end up looking like they're supposed to, because you can't, think about it, the browser is not going to let me as the designer decide what file from your system to upload um, because of the security. So you can't populate that control with pre-filled with a file. So it just gets tricky. Anyway. So the problem that I've been alluding to and trying to figure out is we had originally kind of glossed over this, and then I came back and was talking about it with one of my compatriots, Manu. I don't know if you've met Manu, and realized that there was a problem. So the idea was when you did a successful, you have a button. They filled out the form. We have a submit button, and a primary button. They click the button, and that would on successful submission, it would clear the draft. And um, when we stopped and thought about that, the problem comes in that if a uh, if you do additional validation on the form in your action stack and decide that you can't that there's some validation that failed. Now you don't want the draft to clear automatically. It's so the um, now the idea is that you might have an action that I mean we as Plantain app will not know when you click the OK button whether the draft is considered complete or not. And so we're proposing that perhaps there's an action that says clear the draft. But if we automatically clear it, you might not want it to have been cleared. If we don't automatically clear it, then they submit a valid transaction, whatever that is, and then it's still there as showing up as a draft on their screen. So our original goal of you don't have to do anything except turn it on starts to get a little messy. You're going to have an action that says clear the draft when you submit. Doesn't sound like a big thing, but just wondering if that number one, does the problem that I'm describing make sense? Number two, do you see a better way? Ben has his hand up.
I have an idea. Similar to how we have on error on certain actions. What if on buttons there is a clear draft kind of logic action stack where we have to come up with a true false value. So we can create a custom action stack that does whatever testing we need to do, ultimately driving down to one true false value. And then that true false value is what determines whether or not it gets cleared. So if someone has their own validation, they don't necessarily have to remember, oh, I have to put you know, a, a clear command here. It's if you fill out in the button anything in that action stack that gets run and then determines whether it gets cleared or not.
Uh, so thanks for an original idea. I hadn't even gotten there, but so how does that run before or after the on submit?
I would think it would run. That's a good question. I guess I would say it would have to run prior to the submit to actually the action stack of the button because it's more of a validation kind of saying, okay, did they submit everything that needed to be submitted in a proper way that would constitute me erasing the draft
Mhm.
stored for this form? It doesn't mean that it's going to stop the rest of the action from processing unless the person wants it to. I mean, if it runs before and you fail that validation, then perhaps because if it's in context, we can use that validation value in our regular action stack and skip our process if we encapsulate everything in an execute actions and say, well, if the previous validation failed, then don't run this, don't save anything, don't make changes. Um, but if we do it after the fact, then we kind of lose out on that. So I would say run it before the general action stack.
And I have no idea the feasibility of this, but I'm kind of catching your vision, and let me frame it in another way. If we had a validation action stack and a submit action stack, um, that could be true for any kind of a button, whether or not you have whether or not it's in draft mode. Your validation stack runs first, and if it fails validation, the submit stack never runs, right? So um, it would run first. It would have this true false um, result that would need to that would drive both the autosave stuff and the um,
My only thought, because I'm trying to think of it from a perspective of maximum flexibility, I would caution against automatically deciding not to run the general action stack, the normal one, on a failed validation. I would rather be able to use the context value of whatever was the final result of the validation to determine in our general action stack if we want to skip the whole thing, leave it up to the developer to decide. If we want to skip all of our work, then we put everything into one execute actions with the condition of whatever the validation final result was. Because there may be situations where someone hits submit, and if you failed that validation, maybe you don't want to go all the way through your process, but there's some other things that still need to happen. And if you block us from that, then we can't do anything on the regular submit. Does that make sense?
so it does. And let's put a pin in that in a second because Mark has
Mhm.
his hand up. Maybe he can add to the add or redirect. What do you got, Mark?
I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add to that particular conversation. So if you want to finish it, go ahead.
Okay. So Ben, I was thinking that your um, the the validation action stack could do any kind of action, so um, you could still accomplish anything that you want, and in a reliable, guaranteed order. It's just that um, the result of that could prevent part two from running, as it was kind of how I was envisioning that. But then I have to step back and ask the question. We've introduced this concept of a validation stack. We still have to teach people about how to do that. Is the Would the simplicity of just you have to you have to understand that you have to decide when to clear the draft. That's not which is a lower bar, you know. Um, just to let you know what our some of our thoughts are. One of the possibilities would be if you have save auto drafts turned on, that we would just we could do a validation when you try to save the form to make sure that there's at least one clear draft action somewhere. meaning we guaranteed you had to think about it, and then you decide where it goes. So that was one of the possibilities. All right, Mark, you're going to take it in a slightly different direction. So what do you got? Nope. No. Okay.
Sorry, I was talking away and
Ah,
the mic undone. Um, so I have at least two items at the moment to add to this conversation,
cool.
and I can be brief. But one is, I'm sure you guys at Plant and App have already been discussing it, but I wasn't part of that discussion, so I apologize for not being in the know. But when I think back to the current form's ability to check the box to save to report, it occurs to me that that data is being saved in the database on the server. That seems like and actually, I don't know that to be true, but if the data were to be saved on the server, that seems to me like it would be the ultimate best way to be able to refill a form from any device that the user has moved to. So that is one thought. And you can comment on it, or you can just say, yeah, we thought of it, never mind. But then I'll have
Okay,
to bring up my second thing.
what's your second thought?
All right. That was good. Um, all right. So the thought occurred to me that if a user were to walk away from a form that was partially filled in and then return at some later time, I can see the situation where some of the fields that they filled out then are maybe not appropriate for now. So as a developer, I think that I might want to flag or tag a field or two that I wouldn't want to be restored, or I would want to call attention to force the user to reevaluate that field.
Interesting.
Some things are timely.
Yeah, I think thanks for help. I mean, that's a that's a possibility we've never encountered. And if you, so now I'll go back and comment on your other one, the save to reports. Um, that functionality is how you can implement save as draft, or one of the ways in action form. And so data gets stored there. You get a key. You can use the key to restore the form fields, and there is no provision for what you just mentioned, the something that went stale in the ensuing time frame. So um, you might, um, but this it does bring up the question of um, do you as the form designer need to know that they're operating from a draft form?
Do I need to know that?
Is that a so for example, if when they click your save button, if it had um, a token that was draft was restored true false, you could then check those fields that might have gone stale, or handle it in a different way, knowing that it was a recall from autosave versus a fresh form fill.
Okay, so I think you're asking, would I, as the keeper of the data, want to know that they had handled that from a draft copy so that I could evaluate the data and compare particular fields, the draft versus what got saved? I think I would flip that around. The responsibility of maintaining the data integrity, I'd flip it around to force the user to reevaluate that choice before they hit submit, instead of asking me to compare the values and make an intelligent decision. That's what I would do.
Okay. All right. So Jim, you get last word on this one. We can revisit it next week if we need to.
Just that something Mark said made me think, at a field level on a form, should it be whether to include that in a draft? Could there ever be sensitive data that you wouldn't want to necessarily save, even in a browser, that you may not want that out there, and include in draft or not?
Sure. You have a password field should the password be included in a draft. Our thinking was and we hadn't anticipated that, so it's a great thing to bring into the conversation, and I'll add that to it. But we were thinking that things that a save as draft on the local browser would be encrypted and tamper resistant. But that doesn't stop the possibility that maybe you don't even want to include it in the draft, and I like it. So
Yeah, I was just thinking, one of the places I volunteer has a shared computer, and walk up and, oh, there's the draft of the person who used it before me. And
absolutely. And yep, and if it asked for any kind of personal identifiable information, maybe you want to exclude it. So cool. All right. As threatened, I do have to drop away early today, so I'm going to do that. And we're going to absolutely skip Afterglow, so sorry about that. We will catch up and do it all again next week, and we can continue the discussion, or maybe you guys bring something that you want to talk about. But I do thank you for your help, and if you get ideas on what I was asking about and anything that you want to email me about, I'd be happy to include it in our story. Thank you, one and all.